I was forced to marry the youngest alien princess, but everything shifted when she revealed her true. The stars outside the viewport seemed to stretch like tiny pinpricks into infinity, distant yet brilliant. His hands rested on his knees, but his mind was far from still. The news that had reached him only hours ago kept repeating in his head. He was being forced to marry the youngest princess of Zorinthia. Elias had served humanity for nearly 20 years, traveling to remote colonies, negotiating peace treaties, and on occasion, diffusing conflicts that threatened entire sectors. He had faced rogue traders, alien raiders, and planetary disputes, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this. Marriage. Not for love, not even for friendship, but as a political pawn in a complex game between humanity and the Zorinthian Empire. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm the growing tension in his chest. "This is absurd," he muttered under his breath. "I'm supposed to marry an alien princess to keep the peace." The words tasted strange even as he spoke them aloud. The shuttle made a soft jolt, signaling that it had entered Zorinthian space. Elia's eyes scanned the horizon, where the palace loomed in the distance, a massive floating structure suspended above a shimmering crystal ocean. Towers of polished metal reflected the colors of the alien sunset, casting long, multicolored shadows across the water. It was beautiful, too beautiful for someone he was meant to fear, or at least respect from a distance. He tried to imagine the princess he would soon meet. Lyria, youngest daughter of Emperor Vorin, known for her poise, intelligence, and rumored sharp tongue. Human intelligence reports painted her as politically skilled but aloof, her loyalty to her empire absolute. Elias, however, felt only skepticism. Could someone so young wield such power effectively? And more importantly, would he survive the social politics of a royal court that didn't fully trust humans? The shuttle landed with a gentle hiss, the magnetic field settling onto the palace's docking platform. Elias rose, adjusting his formal uniform, which felt heavier than usual. He had no illusions. His appearance mattered more than his opinion in the coming hours. As the doors opened, he was met by two attendants, their forms slender and elegant, their skin shimmering faintly in the light. "Captain Wren," one spoke in a smooth, musical tone, "welcome to Zorinthia." "Thank you," Elias replied, bowing slightly. Even this simple gesture felt foreign, but he knew customs mattered here. One misstep could damage the fragile balance he was meant to maintain. The attendants led him through corridors that seemed to float above the crystal waters, the floors glowing softly beneath their feet. Paintings of Zorinthian history lined the walls, battles, alliances, and portraits of previous rulers who looked as stern as they were majestic. Elias could not help but compare them to human leaders, rigid, formal, yet undeniably graceful. Finally, they reached a massive chamber with walls of translucent crystal, light bending through it to create 1,000 shifting colors. At the far end, standing with regal poise, was Lyria. She was taller than he expected, her features delicate yet commanding, her hair flowing like liquid silver. Her eyes met his, calm and unreadable. "Captain Wren," she said, her voice soft but confident, carrying a weight of authority that surprised him. "You honor Zorinthia with your presence." Elias bowed again, feeling slightly awkward under the intense gaze. "Princess Lyria, I am honored to be here." There was a pause, a tension in the air that seemed to hum louder than the palace itself. Then, with a subtle inclination of her head, Lyria gestured for him to rise. "I am aware of your discomfort with this arrangement," she said, speaking as if she could read his thoughts. "But you must understand, the alliance is not optional. Humanity's survival depends on our cooperation." Elias clenched his jaw. "Survival? That sounds dramatic." "Perhaps," Lyria replied, her tone not unkind. "But diplomacy is rarely simple, and neither is marriage when it serves a greater purpose." He wanted to argue, to protest that he was not a political pawn, yet he could see the truth in her words. In this moment, he realized he had no choice. To refuse could mean more than personal discomfort. It could risk the fragile truce humanity had worked decades to achieve. The first days in the palace were a mixture of protocol and quiet observation. Elias learned quickly that nothing was done without intention. Meals were served in precise portions, conversations were measured, and every glance or gesture could carry meaning. Lyria observed him with a careful neutrality, neither overly warm nor cold. She tested him in small ways, slightly unusual questions, unexpected scenarios, subtle challenges, to measure his character and resolve. Elias, in turn, observed her. There was more than protocol behind her eyes. At times, he caught a glimpse of curiosity, or perhaps amusement, fleeting across her expression before she masked it again. He found himself wondering what she truly thought about humans, about him, and about this forced marriage. One evening, as the twin moons of Zorinthia rose over the crystal oceans, Elias stood on the balcony overlooking the shimmering waters. The palace seemed alive in the moonlight, every surface reflecting faint colors that danced across the air. Lyria appeared silently beside him, her presence gentle but unmistakable. "You seem troubled," she said. Elias shrugged. "It's difficult to reconcile duty and personal choice. I've spent my life making decisions for others, but this feels different." "You are not alone," Lyria replied. "We all serve something greater than ourselves. Some call it duty, others call it destiny. Perhaps it is both." Her words struck him in a way he hadn't expected. There was wisdom in her calm voice, a certainty that made him question his own assumptions. Maybe she was not just a political figurehead, but someone who truly understood the weight of responsibility. Over the following days, small moments began to shift Elia's perception. Lyria would quietly share stories of her childhood, speaking of the floating forests of Zorinthia and the creatures that lived among the crystal canopies. She asked questions about Earth, about human culture, about things he thought mundane but that clearly fascinated her. For the first time since his arrival, Elias felt something resembling connection. He realized that beneath the ceremonial obligations and political tension, there was a person, complex, intelligent, and capable of surprising depth. Yet the shadow of the forced marriage remained, a constant reminder that he was a guest in a world not fully his own. One day, while walking through the palace gardens, Elias asked cautiously, "Princess Lyria, do you ever wish that these duties didn't bind us?" Lyria paused, her gaze fixed on a delicate, glowing flower that seemed to respond to her presence. "Every day," she admitted quietly. "But I also know that some responsibilities cannot be avoided. What we do now shapes the future of both our peoples. Sometimes personal wishes must wait for the greater good." Her honesty surprised him. It was rare to hear a royal speak so openly, especially to a human who was considered at best a guest and at worst a bargaining tool. Elias began to see her not just as a princess, but as a leader, strong, principled, and burdened by choices that few could understand. That night, as he returned to his quarters, Elias felt a subtle shift in his own thoughts. Perhaps this marriage was more than an obligation. Perhaps it was the beginning of something larger, a bridge between humans and Zorinthians, built on understanding rather than fear. Yet he also knew that trust would take time, and the path ahead was fraught with political pitfalls, hidden agendas, and challenges neither of them had faced before. As the first part of this journey closed, Captain Elias Wren realized that the story of their forced union was only beginning. The palace, the oceans, and even the princess herself held secrets yet to be revealed. And somewhere deep in his mind, he understood that everything could change, for better or worse, once the true nature of Lyria was revealed. The stars outside the balcony shimmered quietly, indifferent to the struggles of humans and aliens alike. Yet for Elias, they were no longer distant points of light. They were witnesses to the first step of an unexpected alliance, one that would test courage, patience, and the very definition of what it meant to be human. The first rays of Zorinthia's twin suns cut across the palace, bathing the floating towers in shades of gold and pink. Captain Elias Wren woke slowly, the alien light filtering through the translucent walls of his quarters. The room was elegant and serene, yet completely unfamiliar. Its walls glowed softly, reflecting his movements, and a small hovering orb hovered in the corner, projecting the day's schedule in delicate light patterns. Elias sighed, rubbing his eyes. He had expected discomfort in this foreign palace, but the reality was far more complex. Every object, every ritual, seemed to carry meaning beyond what he could understand. Breakfast had been a series of dishes he could not identify, some glowing faintly, others shifting textures as he tried to taste them. Lyria had observed him with a faint smile as he navigated the alien cuisine. "You must eat," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It may not resemble Earth food, but it nourishes the body differently here. You will grow accustomed to it." Elias had nodded, trying not to show his unease. "I'll try," he replied. He wondered how humans had survived interstellar travel without such adaptations. It seemed Zorinthians had perfected every detail of life to suit their environment, and yet they expected humans to adapt instantly. After breakfast, Lyria led him through the palace's gardens. Unlike Earth gardens, these were suspended terraces filled with floating flora that glimmered in the sunlight. Some plants moved gently, as if alive in ways Elias had never imagined. Flowers opened and closed on their own rhythm, and small luminous creatures darted among the foliage. The air carried a scent that was both unfamiliar and soothing, a mixture of mineral sweetness and subtle spice. "You must observe closely," Lyria instructed, pointing to a plant that seemed to respond to her presence. "Everything here is alive in a different way. Understanding it is part of understanding us." Elias watched carefully, trying to see what she meant. Slowly, he noticed that the plants reacted to vibrations, gestures, and even thoughts. Some moved closer when they sensed curiosity, while others retreated when approached too boldly. The technology, the biology, and the culture all seemed interconnected in ways he had not considered possible. "It's fascinating," he admitted, feeling a rare spark of excitement. "It's like the entire world is alive and aware." Lyria smiled faintly. "Fascinating, yes, but dangerous if you do not respect it. Many humans have come here with confidence, thinking they could control or ignore these patterns. They learned quickly that arrogance can be costly." Elias nodded, realizing the subtle warning in her words. He was a soldier and diplomat trained to adapt quickly, but Zorinthia demanded more than skills. It demanded understanding, patience, and humility. As the days passed, he learned more about Zorinthian customs. Meals, meetings, and even casual conversations followed strict patterns. Greetings involved subtle gestures, eye contact had specific meanings, and questions could be polite or offensive depending on intonation. At first, Elias struggled to keep up, often making minor mistakes that drew quiet corrections from Lyria. Yet, she never scolded him harshly. Instead, she guided him patiently, her eyes reflecting both expectation and amusement. One evening, they attended a ceremonial gathering in the palace's central hall. The room floated above the crystal ocean, with light streaming through the translucent ceiling. Nobles in shimmering attire moved gracefully, their movements synchronized with soft music that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. Elias felt awkward in the midst of such refinement, aware that every glance and word could be scrutinized. "This is the court of reflections," Lyria whispered. "Every action here echoes beyond the room. One wrong move can be remembered for generations." Elias swallowed nervously. "It feels intimidating." "Good," Lyria said softly. "It should. Respect is earned and awareness is the first step." The evening unfolded with intricate rituals. Elias observed, learning to bow at the right moments, speak when prompted, and maintain a calm demeanor. He noticed that Lyria, while appearing serene, subtly guided him through each step, ensuring he did not falter too visibly. It was an unspoken partnership, one that relied on trust, observation, and mutual understanding. After the ceremony, Lyria led him to a quiet balcony overlooking the ocean. The twin moons reflected in the water, casting soft ripples of light across their faces. For a moment, the tension of protocol lifted, leaving a rare silence. "You are adapting quickly," she said, her voice lighter than usual. "I expected more resistance." Elias chuckled softly. "I am learning, slowly perhaps, but there is so much to understand here." "True understanding," Lyria replied, "is more than memorizing rules. It is seeing patterns, noticing intentions, and respecting differences. Humans often rush to impose order, but here, patience matters more than speed." Elias considered her words. He had spent his life solving problems quickly, relying on logic and action. Here, patience, observation, and subtlety were just as powerful, if not more. He wondered how humans might change if they learned from Zorinthian ways, not abandoning their own strengths, but expanding them. Days turned into weeks, and the pair's interactions grew more natural. They sparred in conversation, testing each other's wit and knowledge. Lyria asked about Earth, about human history, science, and philosophy, often framing her questions in ways that challenged his assumptions. In return, Elias shared stories of exploration, diplomacy, and courage, painting a vivid picture of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. One afternoon, while walking through a corridor lined with flowing light ribbons, Elias asked cautiously, "Princess Lyria, do you ever envy humans? Our freedom, our spontaneity?" Lyria considered the question carefully, watching the light play across the walls. "Envy is not the right word," she said finally. "Perhaps curiosity is better. Humans have creativity and unpredictability. We admire that and sometimes wish we could experience it without consequence." Elias smiled. "Without consequence, yes, that is something I envy sometimes too." There was a pause, comfortable and unforced. Elias realized that their conversations had moved beyond formalities and duties. Slowly, a sense of camaraderie emerged, fragile but genuine. He began to see Lyria not just as a princess or a symbol of political obligation, but as a person with thoughts, dreams, and limits. One evening, the palace suffered a minor disturbance. A security alert flared as a rogue drone approached the palace perimeter. Elias, trained for emergencies, reacted instinctively, coordinating with the palace guards and neutralizing the threat. Lyria watched him with intensity, noting his decisiveness, calm under pressure, and willingness to act without waiting for orders. After the incident, she approached him quietly. "You are different from what I expected," she said. "Many humans would panic or overreact. You adapt, observe, and act with care." Elias shrugged. "It's what I'm trained to do, but thank you. Coming from you, that means more than you know." Her expression softened. "Perhaps we are not so different after all. Differences matter, but understanding each other bridges them. That is how alliances survive." Despite these growing bonds, Elias could not ignore the persistent unease within him. This palace, these customs, and even Lyria herself seemed to hold hidden layers. He sensed that the princess carried secrets she did not share openly, secrets that might change everything he thought he knew about Zorinthia. One night, unable to sleep, he wandered the palace alone. Soft lights guided him through quiet halls, past gardens and pools that glowed faintly under moonlight. The beauty of the palace, the precision of its design, and the subtle hum of alien energy around him filled him with awe. Yet beneath it all, a question persisted. What did Lyria hide? As he approached the balcony overlooking the crystal ocean, he saw her standing there, gazing at the horizon. The twin moons reflected in her eyes, and for a moment she seemed different. Less a princess bound by duty, more a being of strength, mystery, and quiet power. "You are awake," she said without turning. "Walking alone at night can be dangerous." "I could say the same to you," Elias replied, stepping closer. "But perhaps we both seek understanding in our own ways." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps. Curiosity is a dangerous companion, but also a powerful one. Those who embrace it wisely may see truths others cannot." Elias felt a shiver of anticipation. He did not yet know what truths she referred to, but he knew instinctively that their journey had only begun. The bond forming between them, fragile but undeniable, was a bridge not only between two individuals but between two civilizations. And somewhere deep in the palace, amidst its glowing corridors and floating gardens, secrets waited to be revealed, secrets that could challenge everything he believed, and everything Zorinthia believed about humans, aliens, and the fragile alliance they were meant to uphold. For now, Elias and Lyria stood silently, watching the moons rise over the crystal ocean, bound by duty but connected by curiosity, a connection that promised adventure, challenge, and discovery beyond anything either had imagined. The palace of Zorinthia was quieter at night, as though it were holding its breath. The twin moons cast soft, silver light across the floating gardens and crystal halls, illuminating paths that glimmered like liquid. Captain Elias Wren moved cautiously, careful not to draw attention. Though he had learned the palace's routines, a restless curiosity pushed him beyond the boundaries of familiar corridors. He had begun noticing things that did not fit with the ordinary, subtle shifts in the air, faint glows along the walls, and whispers of movement where no one should be. His training as a soldier and diplomat had taught him to trust his instincts. Something was different here, something beyond politics or protocol. As he rounded a corner near the eastern tower, Elias froze. There, in the soft light of a secluded chamber, was Princess Lyria. She was not performing the formal rituals of court or palace life. Instead, she seemed transformed. Her silver hair floated gently around her, shimmering as if caught in invisible currents. Her hands glowed faintly, and the air rippled with energy at her touch. Small crystalline plants in the room moved toward her as if drawn by an unseen force. Elias blinked, unsure if he should speak. Lyria noticed him immediately, but there was no surprise on her face, only calm, as though she had expected him to see this. "You were not meant to witness this," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that made him pause. "But since you are here, perhaps you are ready to understand." Elias stepped closer, his mind racing. "Princess, what is this? How are you doing this?" Lyria's eyes reflected both caution and trust. "These are abilities I have kept secret, abilities that some fear, some revere. I can manipulate light and matter in ways humans cannot yet comprehend, but these powers are not for display. They are a responsibility, a gift, and a burden." Elias could hardly speak. The Zorinthian princess he had thought of as merely clever and strategic was far more than that. She was extraordinary in ways he could barely imagine. He felt a mix of awe and apprehension. "Why reveal this to me?" he asked cautiously. "You barely know me, and yet you trust me with something so personal." Lyria approached him slowly, her presence calm and deliberate. "Because you are different, Captain. Humans think in ways others cannot. Your intuition, your creativity, your courage, they are rare qualities here. I need allies who can see beyond the ordinary, who can act when logic alone is insufficient. That is why I trust you." Elias swallowed hard. Trust from a princess, a ruler in her own right, was rare. And yet her words resonated with him. It was not just power she offered, it was recognition of his own potential. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I've faced danger, negotiated treaties, survived battles, but nothing like this. It's overwhelming." "You do not need to respond with words," Lyria said softly. "Actions, understanding, and respect will suffice. For now, observe, learn, and when the time comes, you will act." Over the following days, Elias watched Lyria closely. She moved through the palace with a grace that seemed natural, yet at times he caught glimpses of her hidden abilities. Light shifted subtly as she passed, objects adjusted in ways invisible to ordinary eyes, and creatures of the palace gardens responded to her presence. It was clear she had mastered control, yet she kept her powers concealed from most of the court. One evening, she invited him to a private chamber overlooking the crystal ocean. The room was softly lit, with floating lanterns that moved gently as though following invisible currents. "Captain," Lyria began, "there are forces within the palace and the empire that do not welcome change. They fear what they cannot control. My abilities and now our alliance may seem threatening to them." Elias frowned. "Are you saying there's danger?" "There is always danger," Lyria replied, "but not all threats are obvious. Some hide in shadows, masked by tradition, authority, or ambition. That is why you must be observant, cautious, and ready." Elias felt a surge of determination. "Then I will stand with you, not because I must, but because I choose to, and because humanity deserves allies we can trust." Lyria's gaze softened, and for a moment the weight of royal duty seemed to lift from her shoulders. "Choice, that is a rare quality. Many act out of fear, obligation, or expectation. You act out of understanding. That is why you are needed." The next day, the palace experienced an unusual disruption. A series of alarms echoed through the halls as an unknown ship approached the perimeter. Elias, trained for emergencies, acted quickly, coordinating with the palace security while observing Lyria's calm demeanor. Unlike most humans who might panic or hesitate, she manipulated subtle currents of energy to shield the palace, redirecting potential harm with quiet precision. After the threat passed, Elias approached her, admiration evident in his eyes. "You make this look effortless. How do you control it so well?" "It is discipline, focus, and understanding of energy," Lyria explained. "Power without wisdom is dangerous. I have learned to balance it, to act when necessary and remain hidden when required." Elias nodded slowly, realizing that true strength was not just in physical or political skill, but in self-control and understanding. Lyria embodied that balance. Their bond grew stronger, forged not just through duty, but through shared moments of insight and understanding. Lyria began asking Elias to share his own experiences, stories of human ingenuity, survival, and unexpected problem-solving. In return, she taught him subtle ways to observe the palace, interpret hidden signs, and understand patterns invisible to ordinary eyes. One afternoon, they walked through the palace gardens, the floating flora shifting in response to Lyria's presence. "Captain," she said, "humans have a unique perspective. You see connections we might overlook, notice details others miss. That is why your role is important, not just for diplomacy but for understanding the unseen." Elias smiled. "It seems the more I learn, the more I realize how little I understand. But I want to learn, not just for duty but because I respect what you do here." Her expression softened. "Respect is earned through observation and effort, not fear or obligation. You are learning quickly." That night, Elias could not sleep. He wandered the palace alone, reflecting on what he had witnessed. Lyria's abilities were extraordinary, yes, but it was her wisdom, her patience, and her courage that truly impressed him. She carried immense responsibility with quiet strength, yet she sought allies and understanding rather than domination. Humans could learn from such leadership, he realized. As he walked past the eastern wing, he noticed a faint glow behind one of the tall doors. Curiosity drew him closer. Peering inside, he saw Lyria practicing quietly, shaping light into intricate forms, guiding objects with invisible currents, and manipulating energy with precision. It was mesmerizing, a combination of art, science, and power. She noticed him but did not stop. Instead, she spoke softly. "Do you see now why discretion is necessary? Not everyone can handle what they do not understand. Fear can lead to mistakes, conflict, even tragedy. Elias nodded. I understand, and I am grateful you trust me with this. It is more than I expected from any alliance. Trust, Lyria said, is the foundation of true partnerships. Without it, even the strongest abilities or the most clever plans will fail. In the days that followed, they began planning for potential threats together. Elias learned to anticipate the palace's needs, while Lyria observed his strategies and adapted her powers to enhance their defenses. They discovered that combining human intuition with Zorinthian abilities created an unprecedented synergy, one that neither species could achieve alone. One evening, Lyria took him to a secluded terrace overlooking the vast expanse of the Crystal Ocean. The twin moons reflected in the water, creating a landscape of light and shadow. Captain, she said, humans often underestimate themselves. You see limitations, and yet you overcome them through creativity and courage. That is why you are remarkable not for strength alone, but for vision. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. I thank you. I never imagined a princess would see me this way, not just as an ally, but as someone capable. She smiled faintly, her gaze distant. Capable, yes, but also responsible. Our actions now will shape not only our lives, but the future of both our peoples. That is the weight of knowledge and power. Elias realized that he had not only witnessed Lyria's secret abilities, but also glimpsed the philosophy behind them, the wisdom, patience, and foresight that made her a leader. Humans had often struggled to reconcile ambition with responsibility, but here was someone who balanced both perfectly. As the moons rose higher, Elias felt a new sense of purpose. This alliance, this forced marriage that had once seemed absurd, now held potential for something far greater. Together, they could navigate danger, uncover hidden threats, and perhaps change the course of history for humans and Zorinthians alike. And as he stood beside Lyria, watching the light ripple across the crystal ocean, Elias understood that the true adventure was only beginning. Secrets had been revealed, trust had been established, and the foundations of a remarkable partnership had been laid. For the first time, he did not see himself as a pawn in a political game. He saw himself as a participant in something extraordinary, a journey that would test courage, wisdom, and the very meaning of alliance between species. The shadows of the palace no longer felt threatening. Instead, they seemed alive with possibilities, waiting for those brave enough to step forward and embrace them. And Elias Wren, human and diplomat, soldier and observer, was ready. The palace of Zorinthia, usually a place of serene beauty, now hummed with tension. Unseen currents of danger had begun to stir within its walls. For weeks, subtle disturbances had hinted at a plot, messages intercepted, security anomalies noted, whispers among courtiers carefully observed. Elias Wren had noticed these signs, but he trusted Lyria's judgment above all. That morning, he entered the command chamber with urgency. Lyria stood at the center, her silver hair catching the light, her posture calm but alert. The chamber itself floated above the crystal ocean, its floor projecting maps, energy grids, and palace schematics in delicate holograms. We have a situation, Lyria said without preamble. A faction within the palace seeks to challenge the throne and break the alliance with humanity. They fear change and innovation, and they underestimate both of us. Elias frowned. How extensive is the threat? Lyria's eyes reflected thoughtfulness. It is organized, patient, and cunning. They have allies within and outside the palace. One wrong move could lead to disaster. Elias nodded. Danger did not scare him, but the stakes were higher than he had ever faced. This was not a battlefield of soldiers. It was a battlefield of strategy, loyalty, and trust. Every choice mattered. Then we prepare, he said. I will coordinate the palace security, analyze their movements, and anticipate their strategies. Lyria smiled faintly. And I will manage the unseen forces, using discretion and precision. Together, we must act swiftly, yet carefully, Timing will be critical. For the next hours, they worked side by side. Elias moved through corridors, coordinating guards and observers, ensuring communication lines were secure. Lyria, with subtle gestures and focused energy, adjusted security systems, monitored hidden corridors, and discreetly neutralized minor threats before they escalated. It was a dance of intelligence and intuition, human and Zorinthian abilities merging seamlessly. By evening, the first move of the conspirators became clear. A group of palace nobles had gathered allies in the eastern wing, intending to seize control of key chambers and disrupt the communication network. Elias, observing their patterns, realized that a direct confrontation would be disastrous. They were well-armed and well-trained, and any misstep could spark chaos. "Princess," he said quietly as he reviewed the holographic map, "if we attack directly, we risk too much. But if we redirect them, isolate them, and cut off their support, we can neutralize the threat with minimal conflict." Lyria nodded. "Your strategy is clever. I will guide the palace systems to create diversions and barriers. Humans see patterns differently than Zorinthians. That is why your input is invaluable." As the night fell, the palace transformed into a maze of controlled energy and careful misdirection. Holographic barriers and subtle traps redirected the conspirators' movements, guiding them toward non-lethal containment areas. Elias led human and Zorinthian guards, quietly but efficiently implementing the plan. The first encounter occurred in the library corridor. A group of nobles, sensing the subtle shifts in palace security, attempted to bypass the diversions. Elias stepped forward, calmly signaling the guards to intercept. Using both logic and intuition, he anticipated their movements, guiding them toward containment without unnecessary confrontation. Meanwhile, Lyria manipulated light and energy, creating invisible barriers and subtle forces that blocked escape routes and disarmed traps. Her powers were precise and controlled, ensuring that no one was harmed, yet the conspirators' progress was halted at every turn. Elias felt a surge of admiration. She was not only powerful but strategic, disciplined, and calm under pressure. His own skills complemented hers perfectly. Human adaptability, intuition, and problem-solving combined with Zorinthian abilities created a synergy neither species could achieve alone. The climax of the confrontation came in the central chamber, where the leaders of the conspiracy had gathered. They were armed with ancient weapons and modern technology, confident that their knowledge of the palace would give them the upper hand. But Elias and Lyria had anticipated every move. As the conspirators entered, Elias signaled the guards, while Lyria subtly manipulated the environment. Light shifted to create illusions, barriers rose in precise patterns, and energy fields guided movements toward containment zones. The conspirators struggled, disoriented and unable to coordinate. "Yield," Elias called firmly, stepping forward with authority. "This palace is under our protection. Your plan fails, and resistance will only lead to defeat without honor." The leader of the conspirators hesitated, then realized the futility of their efforts. One by one, they surrendered, neutralized by strategy rather than force. Elias felt a deep satisfaction, not from victory over others but from the realization that human ingenuity, combined with trust and observation, had prevented unnecessary conflict. Lyria approached him, her expression calm but proud. "You acted with courage and wisdom." Not many humans could have anticipated their movements so effectively. Elias smiled. "We acted together. That is the strength here. You guide the palace with precision and humans adapt quickly. Alone, neither of us could have succeeded." The aftermath of the confrontation was quiet. The conspirators were detained respectfully, their grievances noted but their actions contained. The palace returned to its usual rhythm, the twin moons reflecting in the crystal ocean as though nothing had happened. Yet Elias and Lyria knew the significance of what they had achieved. Tonight proved something important, Lyria said, her voice soft. Humans are capable of great insight and courage, and when combined with understanding and discipline, the result is extraordinary. Elias felt a warmth of pride. Humans had often been underestimated by other species. Here, on Zorinthia, he had proven not only to himself but to others that human adaptability, intuition, and creativity could stand alongside the greatest powers of an alien civilization. In the following days, the palace recognized the partnership between human and Zorinthian in subtle ways. Courtiers began to consult Elias for advice, while Lyria's confidence in him became evident. The forced marriage, which had once seemed like an obligation, began to transform into mutual respect, trust, and understanding. One afternoon, as they walked through the gardens, Elias asked cautiously, "Princess, do you think humans will ever be fully accepted here?" Lyria considered the question, her eyes on the floating flora. Acceptance comes from understanding. Some will resist, some will adapt, but humans have a unique strength. They see possibilities others overlook, they act with courage, and they learn quickly. That is why humanity will always be valued if not fully understood. Elias nodded. I suppose that is what makes our alliance possible. We bring perspectives that complement each other. Exactly, Lyria said, and tonight proved it. Your insight, your courage, and your willingness to act when needed, it made all the difference. For the first time, Elias felt a sense of purpose that transcended duty. He was not just a diplomat or a soldier, he was part of something larger. Together with Lyria, he could influence the course of history, protect both their peoples, and demonstrate the potential of human ingenuity in ways that others could only imagine. That night, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the ocean, the twin moons casting their reflection across the water, Elias felt a profound sense of connection, not just to Lyria, but to the potential of humanity itself. The events of the past days had tested courage, intelligence, and trust, and humans had proven themselves capable in ways even the Zorinthians had not fully anticipated. Captain, Lyria said softly, you have proven yourself not only as a human, but as a partner. That is rare and that is valuable. Elias met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. I could not have done it alone, and I am grateful that you trusted me. This partnership, it is stronger than I imagined possible. She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both pride and hope. Strength comes from unity, understanding, and courage. Tonight showed all three, and it is only the beginning. The palace, which had once seemed like a place of rules and distance, now felt like a landscape of possibilities. Shadows no longer threatened, but offered opportunities for insight and strategy. And amidst the floating gardens, crystal halls, and soft light of the moons, Elias realized that the true adventure lay not only in surviving danger, but in shaping the future through courage, intelligence, and partnership. For the first time, the forced marriage no longer seemed like an obligation or a political strategy. It was a foundation, a bridge between humans and Zorinthians, a symbol of what could be achieved when curiosity, courage, and understanding met. And Elias Wren, human, diplomat, and soldier, stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The crisis had passed, but the journey was far from over. Hidden forces, unseen dangers, and unknown threats still lingered within and beyond the palace. Yet Elias and Lyria had proven that together, their abilities, human and Zorinthian, were more than enough to confront them. As the twin moons reflected across the crystal ocean, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humans could not only survive among the stars, they could thrive, innovate, and inspire. And as long as he and Lyria stood together, nothing would be impossible. The crystal halls of the Zorinthian palace shimmered with quiet tension. Though the immediate threat from the conspirators had passed, a new challenge loomed, one that neither tradition nor routine could fully anticipate. Word had spread of a faction outside the palace, seeking to destabilize the fragile alliance between humans and Zorinthians. Their motives were unclear, but their intent was unmistakable: to weaken trust and ignite conflict. Captain Elias Wren and Princess Lyria stood together on the balcony overlooking the glowing crystal ocean. The twin moons reflected off the water, painting patterns of light that seemed alive. Elias watched the waves ripple and felt a sense of calm determination. The crisis ahead would not only test strategy and power, but also the partnership he and Lyria had forged. "They will come," Lyria said softly, her silver hair catching the light. "They will test us just as they have tested the palace, but this time it is not only the palace at risk, it is the alliance itself." Elias nodded. "We are ready. Humans are adaptable. We think quickly, act decisively, and learn from every moment. Together we can face this." Lyria's eyes softened, reflecting both pride and caution. "Your people have proven themselves, Elias. Your courage and insight have already made a difference. Tonight we show the rest of the galaxy what is possible when humans and Zorinthians stand united." By evening, the external threat became clear. A fleet of rogue ships, sleek and heavily armed, appeared on the horizon, approaching the palace with intent. Their movements were precise but not coordinated, a sign of desperation and overconfidence. Elias studied their patterns on the holographic display, noting weaknesses and predictable maneuvers. "They lack discipline," he observed. "Their coordination is poor. If we can manipulate the battlefield, we can neutralize them without heavy losses." Lyria stepped beside him, her hands brushing lightly over the control interface. Energy rippled through the chamber as subtle currents formed protective barriers around the palace. "I will guide the shields and illusions. You direct the forces. Humans see angles and patterns that even Zorinthians might miss." As the fleet advanced, Elias coordinated the palace defenses with precision. He directed patrols, set decoys, and analyzed every movement. The humans under his command worked seamlessly alongside Zorinthian guards, responding to changes faster than the enemy anticipated. Meanwhile, Lyria's abilities transformed the battlefield. Light and energy shifted in ways that disoriented the attackers, creating illusions of walls, obstacles, and phantom forces. Ships that thought they could approach undetected suddenly found themselves blocked by invisible barriers. The synergy between human strategy and Zorinthian power was remarkable, a combination neither side had ever encountered. One of the rogue ships managed to break through a barrier, aiming directly for the central palace chamber. Elias and Lyria reacted instantly. He calculated trajectories, predicting the ship's path, while she manipulated energy fields to redirect it safely away. The attackers were stunned, realizing too late that their assumptions about human strategy and alien power were flawed. Elias turned to Lyria. "We can end this now. We coordinate one final move and their fleet will have no choice but to retreat." She nodded, her focus absolute. "Then we act together." The final maneuver was executed flawlessly. Elias directed the palace patrols to create a false retreat, drawing the attackers into a narrow passage over the ocean. Lyria simultaneously manipulated light and energy to guide the ships away from the palace, forcing them to disengage. Within moments, the rogue fleet was gone, leaving only echoes of failure and retreat. The palace remained safe. The alliance between humans and Zorinthians had not only survived, it had been strengthened, tested in a way that proved its resilience. Later, Elias and Lyria walked through the palace gardens. The floating flora shimmered in the moonlight, the gentle glow reflecting the calm after the storm. Elias felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a deeper realization. Humans had been underestimated across the galaxy, but here, their ingenuity, adaptability, and courage had made a tangible difference. "You were incredible," Lyria said, her eyes reflecting admiration. "Not just in strategy, but in leadership. Humans have potential that others do not always see." Elia smiled, feeling warmth in her praise. We only succeeded because we worked together. Your abilities, your insight, they made the difference as much as anything I did. Lyria shook her head gently. It is rare to find someone who combines courage, intelligence, and understanding so seamlessly. You are remarkable, Elias, not for being human, but for how you choose to use your abilities and judgment. For the first time, Elias felt truly recognized. Not just as a diplomat or soldier, but as an equal partner in shaping events that affected entire civilizations. The forced marriage, which had once seemed an obligation and burden, now represented something far more significant, a bridge between two worlds. In the following days, the palace celebrated the victory quietly. Formal ceremonies acknowledged the thwarted threat, but Elias and Lyria chose to focus on rebuilding trust and strengthening bonds. They met with advisors, courtiers, and diplomats, ensuring that humans and Zorinthians understood the benefits of cooperation, respect, and unity. One afternoon, as they stood overlooking the crystal ocean, Lyria spoke thoughtfully. Elias, the galaxy is vast. There will always be challenges, doubt, and fear, but tonight proved that humans and Zorinthians can overcome anything when we act together. Elias nodded, and it proves something else. Humans are capable of more than they sometimes believe. Ingenuity, courage, and understanding, these are qualities we bring to any challenge, not just to survive but to thrive. Lyria's smile was gentle, filled with hope. Then perhaps this alliance is not only political but also a symbol, a demonstration that differences can be strengths, not weaknesses. That is the lesson we must show the galaxy. Elias felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Humans had long been underestimated, often seen as impulsive, weak, or overly emotional. Yet here, in a palace floating above alien oceans, with the most powerful beings in the sector, human creativity, courage, and insight had proven decisive. He realized that the HFY principle, the idea that humans are exceptional in their adaptability and ingenuity, was not just a slogan, but a reality he had lived. The following weeks were filled with collaboration. Human engineers worked alongside Zorinthian scientists to improve palace defenses. Advisors from both species shared strategies, plans, and insights. Elias found himself frequently consulted, his perspective valued not for tradition, but for practicality, innovation, and foresight. One evening, Lyria invited him to the palace observatory, a floating platform that overlooked the vast expanse of stars. The twin moons reflected off the crystal ocean below, and distant planets shimmered on the horizon. Elias, she said, her voice quiet but serious, our alliance is stronger than before, but strength is not just in power or numbers. It is in trust, understanding, and vision. You have shown all three and more. Humans are remarkable not because they are alien to others, but because they learn, adapt, and act when it matters most. Elias felt a surge of pride, but also humility. I never expected recognition like this. I came here as a diplomat, a soldier, a guest, and yet I feel part of something far greater than myself. Lyria stepped closer. You are more than a guest. You are a partner, an equal in shaping the future. And humanity, through you, has shown that it can rise to challenges that others might fear. Elias looked at the moons reflecting in the ocean below. Then perhaps this marriage, this partnership, is more than duty. It is opportunity. Not only for me, but for humans and for Zorinthians alike. Lyria nodded, her expression thoughtful. Yes, and that is why the future holds promise. Together, we can face dangers, build understanding, and show the galaxy the potential of unity. In the months that followed, the palace became a symbol of cooperation. Human ingenuity and Zorinthian wisdom merged in ways that inspired other civilizations. Trade, exploration, and diplomacy flourished. The stories of Elias and Lyria's partnership spread, highlighting not just their personal accomplishments, but the broader potential of two species working together. And in private moments, Elias reflected on how far he had come. The forced marriage that had once seemed a burden now represented connection, trust, and mutual respect. He had witnessed Lyria's true powers, shared in life-or-death crises, and helped secure not only a palace, but the future of an entire alliance. He realized that humans were capable of extraordinary things, creativity, courage, and adaptability, that could change worlds. And together with Lyria, they had done exactly that. On a quiet night, as they stood together on the palace balcony, the twin moons mirrored in their eyes, Elias felt hope for the future. Humans and Zorinthians were no longer distant strangers. They were partners, allies, and friends. And their unity, forged through trust, courage, and shared vision, would endure for generations to come. The stars above seemed brighter, the crystal ocean below more radiant. For the first time, Elias understood that being human was not just about survival. It was about rising to challenges, inspiring others, and shaping the future in ways no one had imagined. And as he stood beside Lyria, side by side, he knew that the journey they had begun together, born of duty, strengthened by trust, and proven through courage, was only the beginning of an extraordinary adventure that would forever change the course of their worlds.